Good afternoon. Kalisperasas. Thank you so much for this opportunity to learn with you at this time and in this place and with this community at a time that is certainly a rock bottom moment in my country and is moving that way elsewhere. I appreciate being invited to the Second International Conference of Democracy and Social Justice because we sure need a hell of a lot more of both. The way I've come to think about this is in terms of what happens when you hit rock bottom. And when you hit rock bottom, you recognize that what you've been doing isn't working, and that if you keep doing the same thing over and over, it's not going to work better because it's responsible for the mess we're in. So it is also a moment in which the need for change can be widely understood and the possibility of it embraced. In this context, a lot of my work, or my calling, has been in the development of leadership, the development of organizing, and the development of social movements and civic organizations with the power to achieve change. Now, I focus on that because those terms, leadership, organizing, and power, are often widely misunderstood. Because from my perspective, it's rooted in three questions posed by the first century Jerusalem scholar Rabbi Hillel, who said when people would come and say, "What should I do with my life?" He said, well, ask yourself three questions. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? Not meant to be selfish, but it's a demand for enough self-awareness that we can actually see others. And the second question, if I am for myself alone, what am I? Because to be a who and not a what, a human being and not a thing, is to recognize that we are relational creatures. We exist in relationship with others. We grow in relationship with others. And relationship is fundamental to who and what we are. And finally, he says, ask yourself, if not now, when? So for me, leadership's about the interaction of those three elements of self, other, and action. And organizing for me is a particular form of leadership that begins by asking first, not what is my issue, but who are my people? With whom am I engaging in this relationship of leadership? And the question, who are my people, is not a trivial question. I attended a session at the Kennedy School after the general election between the Trump campaign management and the Harris campaign management in a room, in the same room for a day and a half. It was pretty interesting. But I came away with the clear sense that what the Harris campaign had been doing was trying to tell people how they ought to feel, rather than listening to how they actually feel. And I think that is a problem. And there are reasons for this, but what it means is that we're not really engaging with our people. We're not clear about who our people are. We may know something about categories or demographics or labels, but do we know the people? Another example from the Harris campaign was New York Times sent a reporter with an organizer in Wisconsin to go door to door. And they encountered a woman who came out, and the organizer said, you must be very concerned about, he said, well, I'm from the Harris campaign. You must be very concerned about choice. Well, she sort of responded lightly. Then he goes, well, what about climate? Well, what about education? He starts going down a list of how do I categorize this person so that we can then target this person for the appropriate message that the algorithms will generate. Now that's not knowing your people. That's dehumanizing your people rather than humanizing them in such a way that it all becomes real. The second question, who are my people? What is the change they need? Not because I think they need this change, but because it's within the lived experience of the people with whom we work. What are the pain points? What are the hurt points? Where are the hope points? And finally, it's about how can I work with these folks to develop the power they need to achieve the change that they want. That's the idea of people, power, and change. Now, to me, that's what this organizing work is about. Engaging with people, discerning the needs, the desires, the wants, what change means, and then developing the power to achieve it. It is to, and so this is not like providing services to clients or marketing products to customers. This is about building constituency, which comes from the Latin constare, which means to stand together. It's to bring people together, to stand together, learn together, decide together, act together, and hopefully to win together. In my country, it's a matter of 3 chickens having come home to roost. One is a constitution that is fundamentally oligarchic and not democratic because it was designed to, in some way, balance a view of government as by the governed, democracy, or a view of government in which some are meant to govern and others to obey. The institutionalized racism part of my country since the beginning. And it's one reason why it doesn't work very well, or that it resists change more than it facilitates it. And that's one of the things that makes it possible for a minority to seize control of this mechanism we call government, which is, in the theory of liberal democracy, the critical power source to balance the concentrations of private power in wealth and in whatever other ways as well. The other challenge, I think, particular in the other chicken, rather, my country, is that in 1976, our Supreme Court ruled that money is speech. What that meant was that there could be no constraints on campaign spending. Now, it's not so much where the money comes from, it's the fact that there's no constraints. What it did was create an infinite demand, and in response to that, a multi-billion-dollar industry of electoral marketing developed that really now shapes our political processes. In other words, one way to think of it is a shift in the electoral means of production. At one time, people engaged with other people, not always in lovely ways, but engaged with other people in parties and so forth. Now, people do not connect with other people. It's all algorithms connecting to other algorithms, which is the situation I described at the beginning. And so it takes the practice of politics and legitimately turns it into a form of marketing. So we have these 2 structural challenges that we're dealing with here. But the third one is one that I think we widely share. And that really goes back to the 1970s, when the campaign for market fundamentalism underpinned the whole neoliberal drive, in which elites progressively abandoned any commitment to egalitarian politics. And it created the situation that Thomas Piketty has described as a Brahmin left, so-called, defined by education, that abandons any commitment to those who are not part of that world. And that creates, as Piketty said, it creates the constituency for the merchant right, who offer identity in lieu of well-being. Well, at least you're white. And strategy really, as you all may know, comes from the Greek word strata. And the field was called a strata, and the army's job was to take the field, so it was called a strata. And the general was called a strategos up here on the hill, coming up with the theory of change or a hypothesis about how to win the battle. And the ranks of soldiers down in the valley, they were called tacticas. It's where we get strategy and tactics. The problem is that often a cloud settles between the mountaintop and the valley. And the people in the mountaintop think they got the whole truth because they got the big picture. And the people in the valleys think they got the whole truth because they understand the context in intimate detail. The reality is we need each other. We need both to develop strategy that has power and effect. There's no substitute for human interaction. Now, I teach online. I mean, I have organizing classes, but we all see each other. We're building community with each other. The idea that we can substitute symbols and images for humans has got us way off track. I was at a dinner at MIT where Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the World Wide Web, was saying that machines can make decisions, but only humans can make choices. His point was that machines are essentially calculating devices, zeros and ones. Well, we can calculate not as fast as a machine, but we also learn through our emotions, through our hearts. We learn through our bodies. We learn through our experiences. In other words, we have such richer sources of learning, understanding, and capacity. And that is about developing the capacity not simply to decide, but to make judgments. That's what human beings are capable of. And that's the kind of challenge we face right now. For me, the questions are, with whom do we work? Based on what shared values? How do we build learning into what we're doing? And how do we act in such a way that generates more capacity, not less? This is the work I think we have to do, all of us. And as is the premise of this entire conference, it's not work you do in one place. It's not work you do in one country. It's work that has to be done interdependently in an interdependence that creates power, not the kind of interdependence that takes power away. So let's get back to basics. The three questions that matter. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when? Thank you for this opportunity, and good luck.